This episode is going to be bucket episode number 1. Now, what I'm going to do with these bucket episodes is that there's quite a lot of things that I haven't done within the hobby space that I've been in for the last 30 plus something years, and things that I've always wanted to do, but for some reason, time, money, or the emphasis to get out and do it has never really come to the forefront. So as part of doing this now, streaming YouTube videos, I'm going to try and knock some of those items off my bucket list. Now, if you were around for the first video, you would have seen me talk about Warhammer Fest. And it seems that there's going to be a recurring theme to these episodes that I put out, because it always starts with me taking you on a trip through time. So in the first episode, we visited 1992 and the first games day I attended, and me comparing that to the Warhammer Fest that we've just had up in Manchester. But for this episode, I'm going to go even further back. I'm going to go back to 1987 and the pages of White Dwarf number 93, where for me, miniature painting changed and my mind just exploded with the wealth of possibility that was out there. Because beforehand, and going back to when I was a young man of 10, when I was first got in, and the first time I ever walked into a games workshop, the only time we ever saw painted figures were either in the pages of White Dwarf that had been created by the studio Heavy Metal team, or they were in that rotating glass cabinet of wonder that seemed to be pride of place in any games workshop store, where figures that had been painted by either the staff members at the store or stuff that people had bought in and was there on display for you to have a look at, whether it was the new line of figures that had just come out or whether it was just stuff that people bought in just because they wanted a chance to display their work off. But that all changed in 1987, because 1987 and those pages of White Dwarf 93, which is now a bit of a collector's item, White Dwarf, and is very, very difficult to get hold of a copy, even on eBay, going for quite a bit of money when you compare it to other White Dwarf issues. But that's because it had probably the first information about Road Trader and Warhammer 40k as well. So that's probably one of the reasons why it's a bit of a collector's item. But we had all those painted entries from the first ever Golden Demon competition. Competition that had been set up by a couple of notaries from Games Workshop, including one of my heroes, Mr. John Blanche. And it was going to demonstrate a celebration of miniature painting and award those who have put a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of work into creating miniatures and painted models and dioramas and little bits and pieces that then went on display to really infuse the hobby community about what really could be done with these miniatures and models. Now that's obviously I don't know what we're talking, almost 30 plus something years ago, like I said. So why isn't it taken so long for me to actually have the get up and go to actually put something into the competition? Well, I think it's going to be something that a lot of you who have ever thought about joining this competition would have suffered from before, a real sense of that imposter syndrome that you get. Because you see these models that are painted to such immaculate detail and to levels that I know that I could never achieve, not with my aging eyesight and the shakes in my hands. I'm never going to be at the point where it's going to be a competition winning entry for Golden Demon. I know that. I know my limitations. So often with that, you see your own painting as lacking quite a lot. And you think to yourself, you do not want to put anything you create into a competition where you might suffer a bit of ridicule for entering in the first place. Now, painting wise, I asked this question on my Instagram page and a couple of people got in contact with me about describing where my level of painting is from the pictures and everything I post on my channel. Now, I see myself as probably a top-end tabletop level painter, where it's above the average for armies that you would see on the tabletop and adds to that whole immersion of being able to game with armies that then you can put a little bit more emphasis into your game because everything's nicely painted on the table. Now, that's just me. Whether you choose to be a gamer who doesn't care whether miniatures are painted or not, that's not what we're going into with this episode. We're just looking about where I see my level and could I enjoy myself enough putting something into a competition like Golden Demon. When I turned up in Manchester, literally until the point where I actually handed the models over to the event staff that was there, I was still in a bit of fight or flight mode. That I was either going to go, sod it, it's going in, I don't care what happens, and be ready for whatever outcome it was, or I was literally not going to bother getting it out of the box, turn round out of the queue and leave and never bother putting my models in. But then it struck me when I was waiting in that queue, and the words that were in that White Dwarf 93 that I'd read a couple of days earlier, just to get myself a little bit jazzed up for the event, was that it was a celebration of miniature painting. And I thought to myself, well, why should only people who are entering the competition and are going for the prizes celebrate their miniature painting? Surely, and we see it a lot of times in different areas, that people come on and they compare themselves always to the top level miniature painters, whether it's in the pages of magazines, whether it's through YouTube videos with the countless videos that you can get, which all talk about the same subject for the majority of times. This is the way to paint this model, and not giving any emphasis that there might be multiple ways to painting a model. But it always seems that people withdraw themselves and think to themselves, well, it's not as good as the standard that's going to be in the competition, so therefore I'm actually scared to enter. I spoke to 2 or 3 people at the event, people that I know and people that I know are of a far higher standard of painting than I am. And all of them said they would never put an entry into Golden Demon because they suffer from that imposter syndrome. So did it last? A little bit. A little bit it did. When I went back on the Monday, after the competition entries had been drawn and all the judging had been decided, I thought to myself, well, let's go and say how my 2 entries went on. So I did one in the diorama section, which was my street scene from Mordheim. Again, paying privilege to a game that I love, that I play all the time. And also an entry into the Sigmar single model. Neither of which did anything. Neither of which even made the first cut of the competition. So I didn't even walk away with a pin badge. To be quite honest, I was a bit narked that I didn't. Looking about the amount of pin badges that had been given out for the competition, I'm sure that somewhere along the line, because now you have to pay for the entry in Golden Demon, that realistically Games Workshop could give everyone who entered some kind of little reward for taking the effort to actually enter into their prestige competition, whether they made the first cut or not. Whether it could just be like an entry badge, perhaps, just to say that I was an entrant on that day. I mean, the only thing I've got to prove that is my receipts from handing in my competition entries that I wanted to keep afterwards, just to prove that, yeah, I've done it. I've been able to gird myself to go in, and no matter what happens, to just enjoy the environment of, see if I could raise my level, see if I could enjoy being someone who would put time and effort into a competition entry, or am I happy just at the level I'm at with the higher level tabletop painting. Now, a few things happened over the weekend of Warhammer Fest, which was there, which to me basically bypassed the non-recognition I got from the judges for my pieces. And that's 5 or 6 people during the week, during the Monday when I was picking the award up, who were standing at the table next to me. Few people who had themselves entered the competition turned round, and these people I've never known before said, I really liked what you did there. I really love that bit that you did there. You did that really well, etc., etc. And to get the plaudits from people who had actually seen your work, people who don't know you, and to actually say that they enjoyed what you did, that takes over from any pin badge, any card for commended entry, and even, to be quite honest, a golden team trophy. So am I going to go again? Now, this is the question. Am I aiming to go in for another entry next year? Now, maybe I know some of the pitfalls, some of the levels of the competition. Can I raise myself to? Now, I know again that I'm never going to be in the top echelons of the competition. I know that for a fact. And I'm never going to aim for that. But can I do enough to get one of those bloody pin badges? I think I'm going to work on things. I think I'm going to spend more time. I have a few ideas already of things that I would like to do that could lend themselves to being entries into the competition, and whether I can do those and practice those over a period of time. So by the time next year rolls around and the next Golden Demon competition comes up, that I can decide then whether I am or I'm not going to take the plunge and go again. So am I a sucker for punishment, or did I actually enjoy the whole thing? Well, the process was eye-opening to me. The process at which that, with the application of a little bit more patience than probably what I would spend on most models. I mean, I'm one of those who would like to go for a little bit of instant gratification of the joys of splashing Agraph's Earthshade all over a model, or Nuln all over a model, and letting it work its magic. Contrast paints as well. Contrast paints for me have been a little bit of a godsend with larger projects. That and all the other models like the Army Painter Speed Painting set, the Green Stuff World has just brought their own out as well. There's a lot of different manufacturers that are looking at not now maybe the high level painters, but looking at more as general run-of-the-mill tabletop and gaming painters. So what should you do? Should you bite the bullet and go for it? Well, to be quite honest, I can't tell you that. To be quite honest, I can only tell you that yes, the whole experience was a rewarding experience. And because I'm contemplating going in again, I can't really say that it was a negative experience all round. that maybe it has a little bit of a fire underneath me to make sure that next year's entries are a little bit better than what I've already put in. And let's see what happens. Because at the end of the day, you've got to be in it to win it. So again, let me end by just saying thank you for taking a little bit of time out to listen to this old man witter on about nothing in particular. And wherever your games happens, in the deepest dungeons or the highest starships, I hope that for one thing, you are enjoying your gaming, because at the end of the day, that's what we play games for. And apparently, that's what we paint for as well. See you in the next episode.